Hey guys, welcome back to Flo's World. Today I have a very interesting video in which I want to talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. I got my little favorite mic. The topic that I want to talk about today is stirred after watching the Micheal Jackson movie, and there was just so much resonance in that film that I really want to talk about because it aligns so much with my own life as somebody who's also very creative and is a visionary, and always, for as long as they could remember, had a vision of what their life was meant to be, but didn't always have the environment to really support and honor that and help cultivate that in a healthy way. The thing that really stood out to me in the movie was the father. I had a really hate-love relationship with this aspect because one thing about me is, like, growing up as a really gifted young child, I longed for people to notice that brilliance, and not only that, but also find a healthy way to cultivate that inner greatness within me. And to watch the movie and see that Micheal Jackson was able to have, you know, a father figure to be able to like help cultivate this discipline was really admirable to watch. But one thing that I did not fuck with was the concept in the style that he taught his children how to become really great musicians and artists in that regard. I don't believe in like beating excellence into children. And although sometimes parents do beat their children to get them to understand what they think conceptualize greatness, sometimes there's other ways that parents will beat you up without it being physical that still leaves the same damage in like wounds that could be left with a child who's also getting physically abused. And one thing that really stood out to me in this regard was this concept of like how much of our parents' great desires that they have for us is actually rooted in trauma. And one thing that stood out to me in the movie was how Micheal Jackson's father kept wanting them to deliver this greatness, even when they were working with producers. They're like, oh, don't worry, like, we're gonna get this nailed down. Or they would be practicing all day or had shows all day, and then they would get home and still have to practice. And his father kept initiating and inclining into them, I don't want you guys to have to work and slave at a job the same way that I had to. And if that's the case, then you need to grind hard and really put in that work right now so that later on you're able to have an easier life. And although I do agree with that to a certain extent, one thing in my life that I had to question really early is realizing like the greatness that my parents talk about that they also instill in me and want from me is also rooted in trauma. And I don't think you can really want a life of like abundance and glory and excellence if what you're desiring from me is rooted from a place of lack. And a lot of immigrant parents don't understand this. And noticing that within him and how it actually like created a lot more dysfunction in his life than functionality was really interesting to look at. And I think the way that it plays out in my life was having really creative and nuanced ways of looking at the world really early, but my confines of my visions that I had for myself that are God-given to us was minimized and shrinked also because of my parents' understanding of thinking from survival. And for me, the way that showed up was, yes, I was also very creative growing up, but when the lens in which you view your life through are, well, what can we do so that we have a good life and we're not struggling, and everything is coming from a place of we don't want to struggle, you don't always make the best decisions. And for me, the way that it played out is lying to myself for so long and following a career path that I thought I really wanted until I realized, no, these are just the typical career picks that are given to us by our parents, especially in a lot of African immigrant households, which is a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. And if you're none of those things, then you're basically a disgrace to the family. And so for me, part of minimizing myself was playing into this idea of survival really early on and not realizing that that's what I was doing to myself. And I think that was the thing that really stood out to me in the Micheal Jackson movie, was realizing like, yeah, he did have talent, he did have greatness within him, and I believe that he was already Micheal Jackson before he even came into this earth. And the journey of his existence was a matter of going through the experiences so that he develops into becoming this icon of the world. And I really believe that he knew that instinctively from a really young age. But I don't think his environment was the best of place to really nurture that aspect of him. And we were able to see that transition happen when he was able to get a little bit older. And The same for my reality in that regard was it kind of felt like holding on to whatever circumstances or reality that I was confined into until I got to a place of being able to decide for myself. And one thing that I talk about in my journey, especially when I was kind of around the same age as when he was starting to move. Well, let me see how old he was at that time. Okay, yeah, he was around that age. He was around the age of like, yeah, when you get to that point of like you're an adult now, you're starting to decide for yourself, that shift starts to happen. And for me, one thing that I noticed in my life is anything before the age where I got to the age of being able to decide for myself, a lot of my reality was just cultivated by the environment around me. And what that environment said was applicable to the success that I would be guaranteed in life if I just follow these circumstances. The same way kind of in Micheal Jackson's life that was. And it wasn't until I got to an age where I was able to realize like, damn, when the fuck can I really get out of this? Like, this is not a place suitable for me to really dream and imagine the world that I want. And if I want to cultivate a different world for myself, what does that look like? And one thing that I really liked about Micheal Jackson's story is I think at an early on age he understood this for himself and understood that like who I was and who I was brought up to be, yes, it helped cultivate a little bit of greatness within me and like building that discipline, even though it was rooted in a lot of harm. But at the same time, it didn't give him that creative leeway to really express himself in the ways that he wanted to. And when he realized that I'm at that age where I can really imagine for myself what I want, and not as somebody part of this family band, but essentially the way that I took it was like, step into the role that was carved out for my soul's purpose and my path, which was this musical icon that he was, who understood the impact that he can also create with the world. And I don't know, I think this really hit hard for me because when I will say in my own life, got to that age of like, damn, I don't really have to confine myself to this reality anymore. It really left me with that question of, okay, well then who do I want to be? And I see that shift also in the movie and how Micheal Jackson was all like, you know what, if I don't want to be who my parents want me to be, or in this case his father, he was starting to question, well, who is Micheal Jackson then, and who do I want to be, and how do I step into that? And he was getting really creative with the visions that he had and the impacts that he wanted to make in the world. And part of what helped him do that is I fully believe he understood the concept of co-creation and realizing like, I'm only as great as I allow myself to be. And if I want that type of greatness that I'm itching for, that is inclined in my soul and in my spirit, what does it mean to get there? And he started picturing what that would look like for himself. And I relate to this so hard at the same time because for me, in this aspect of my life, where I was learning to transition and like I found a leeway for myself in my life of like, yeah, I don't have to keep doing this anymore. So my leeway out for me was college and realizing I don't have to go to the same schools that my siblings went to or my friends are going to or my neighbors or that are within the confines of what my parents think is an education. And I remember like in this aspect of my life realizing like, yeah, I don't want to do the things you guys have carved out for me. I want to explore something different for myself. And I got really curious about what that looked like and also the things that I needed for myself, you know, and learning to self-advocate for yourself of like, you know what, I need to have a voice of my own if I really want to get the things that I want met for myself. And so I started exploring like HBCU experiences at this time and what it means to go to a place that could really foster and hold me, knowing that the environments that I come from don't do that for me. So yeah, I also started exploring. I also started imagining what can my life look like if I get out of here. And the thing is, there was one point that I related so hard to the movie with the Micheal Jackson movie, and that was the part where he grabbed the mic and it was his family's last performance. And I resonate with that so hard because sometimes I don't think a lot of people talk about the grief that comes with in pursuit of your greatness, sometimes having to leave people behind and not feeling guilty for that. Yes, he had this amazing band of brotherhood that he was a part of, that they did amazing music with and people loved, but that just wasn't where he wanted to be. And we noticed that clash of guilt between stepping into his individuality and his personhood, but then being merged in so long by his family unit and learning to like detach from that and the guilt that comes with that, and also realizing like, yeah, I have experienced that in my own regard in some way, shape, or form while I was in the midst of detaching from old parts of myself and environments and people and places and things that I knew, and having the courage to do that and walking around with this guilt of like, damn, am I turning on my family if I choose something that is good for me? Am I disrespecting my parents if I do something that is good for me, but maybe they don't understand? And the part where that last performance where he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this for my family, and then after that I'm gonna do my own thing. The part where he was on stage and he was like, everybody, this will be our last performance, and his dad was all like bro, I relate with that so hard, because the way that I played out in my life was when I was applying for colleges, my parents were all like, you're not gonna go all the way halfway across the country to go attend a school, especially my mom. She was all like, you know, education is education no matter where you get it. And they would like try to talk me out of like going to a nearby school, and I'm like, bro, I don't want to go to a nearby school. It's just not gonna fulfill and hold and sustain me in the ways that I need to. I have a vision of myself. It's a desire deep within myself, whether I know what that is gonna look like or not, but I have to follow those instincts. And I was like, I've learned how to be true and loyal to my soul, but this is the early stages of my development and stepping into that ownership of my personhood. So it wasn't as strong, but I was leaning into the crumbs, the little breadcrumbs that the universe was leaving for me until I got the hang of it. And one thing that I do like to say is, in pursuit of the life that you envision for yourself, whether people agree with it or not, you have to be courageous for yourself. You have to be willing for yourself to be like, you know what, whether people see this for me or support me in this, I just have to be the one that's courageous enough to go forward in the thing that is being asked of me in this moment in time. And I love that he took that chance on himself and said, you know what, fuck what my dad gotta think. This is my last performance. This is our last performance, you know? And for me, the way that that played out in my life at this point was, I already knew my parents had an idea or a story already caught out for me. And for me, that just didn't fit. It wasn't applicable to the life that I wanted to live. And in this aspect of my life, I was like very understanding of the fact of like, I really don't know who I am. Everything there is to me and that I am is shaped by the environments, the beliefs, the perceptions, the traumas, the wounds, the ancestral like grief that we've been holding on to. And that's all that's molded me into who I am, but that isn't my true self. And I am in deep search of my own self, you know? But to do that, I have to leave the environments that I got sick in. And I always used to say in this point in my life, you can't heal in the same environment you got sick in. And so for me, my little FU back to my parents and really taking ownership of my life was leaning into the possibilities that I had. For example, well, my parents aren't really that involved in my educational system. They also don't speak the language very well, so I don't always have to be honest about some stuff. And so for me in this aspect of my life, I would just tell them, yes, I already applied to the schools you want me to go to, but really I didn't. I applied to every single university and college that I wanted to go to, except for the ones that they wanted me to go to. And this was my way of just finding that integrity for myself of like, yeah, you're never probably gonna ever see how I want to picture my life and who I want to be and how I want to shape and cultivate that, because all your thinking and your perception of life is rooted in survival and in trauma and in just safe stability and comfortability, you know? But I'm willing to outgrow that aspects of myself. But to do that, then that means I have to be willing to choose the life and the reality that I want to co-create. And if it means not taking your advice, if it means just secretly doing things on my own that respect my own integrity to myself, then I will do it. And for me, that's just what it opted out to. And it wasn't until like I got to college and really like step into this place of unknown that I was able to step into like finally getting to create who I was. And we were able to see that also in the movie with Micheal Jackson of like when he did say this is the last show and really stepped in to that role of like, I'm really gonna fully wholeheartedly own this aspect of myself and step into my greatness and expand on those visions. And like he would get so much motivation and inspiration from all around him because he was tapped into his truth. And the one thing that I realized in my life is the more in alignment I am to my truth, the easier life gets in this cultivation of oneself that is in alignment to the soul's inclination, because you are in co-creation with the universe at that point. You're being true to yourself and life sees that, so life will give you more experiences, more opportunities, more moments to cultivate that deeper you and to coming even closer to what that looks like for you. And we saw that also in the movie of like how his style was developing, how he was trying some things that were working out while also keeping that like fundamental aspect that was cultivated in his childhood, even though there was also a lot of trauma to grieve with that. And I think the way that that also played out in my life is like, yeah, I'm also carrying a lot of trauma, but there's also a lot of like strength and glory within myself that is passed down to me from my environments and my experiences, and also ancestrally. So I will lean into those things in moments where I wasn't so strong in stepping into the unknown. And we saw that in the movie of like, he would try something and he'd be like, okay, let's do this. And before, he probably might have had a lot of amazing, brilliant ideas, but it was his dad who really held that creative control. So watching him get to have all this freeway to expand on himself and all of the things that he learned and how greatness came out of that was like, wow, 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 wow. For me, I saw that also happening in my life of like, within the first year of being in college, because I had an environment where literally nobody knew me. I'm in a whole different city, thousands of miles away from my family, where they don't have any input on what I have to say. They don't have any judgment. They don't have any critique, any opinions added to how I want to go about my life. Every decision and everything that I wanted to do was given to me and for me to decide. And that's when I even found the courage of like, do I even want to do this shit? Do I really want to study biology when I'm so unhappy in these classes and I don't want to focus and my mind isn't just here? And because I was able to have that moment of like truth within myself, I was able to step also within my own agency of oneself and start deciding for myself of like, well, now that I'm in the driver's seat of my life, what does it look like to choose from an autonomous place and co-create my life even deeper? And for me, it started with little things of like, well, who do I want to be? What name do I even want to choose? How do I want to dress myself? You know, what type of things do I want to cultivate? And we saw this in the movie of like Micheal Jackson writing affirmations to himself, writing, this is who I will be, this is what I wear, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. And I will say, I was not, in this aspect of my life, I was like in the beginning stages of really cultivating what that looked like for me and just playing around with this new profound freedom that I had without anybody really telling me what to do in my life. And it was such a glorious year. Like, it was such a glorious year. And I don't know, that movie really made me think about why it's so important to really assess our environment and the people around us, and how much of people's greatness gets lost because it's put in the hands of other people. And the thing is, I don't even think the dad knew that he was trying to live through his own children. He felt like the man and was sitting here negotiating and on some patriarchal ass shit basically because of the success of his children, and then wouldn't applaud him for that. And then you expect your child to still carry greatness. And I don't know, it was just really mind-boggling a little bit to like see this phenomenal icon to the world, but then when he gets home, he's this traumatized, scared child who has this father who says he loves him, but did more harm than he could have ever done good. And could we really even give it up to the dad for the little things that he did, even if it was the little structure? Because that structure was just rooted in so much oppression that I'm just like, I don't know if that really did Micheal any good, to be honest with you. And I think one thing that it made me think about was also like with somebody like Micheal Jackson, who we saw him for the greatness that he was, it humanized him a little bit of like, you know, celebrities and people who demonstrate excellence in their life are human too. And they also have a lot to grieve, a lot to go through, a lot to navigate. And we were able to see that in the close elements within his house. And how those parts never really left him, even while he was co-creating this new reality for himself. And I hope they make a part 2, because that was really centered around like his early development and his relationship to his family, and how that shaped a lot of who he was. And how a lot of us really are carrying greatness within us, but we don't always come from the best environments. And we carry a lot of that ways of operating and being with us that diminish our greatness a little bit. And I don't know, it was just interesting to see the transition of Micheal, of like this little shy, timid kid, but then when he got up on that stage, he was like a beast, you know? And I think to me that speaks on like the glory that gets possessed within us from higher source. And if we don't have beautiful places to cultivate that, then we can misuse and abuse the gift of that child or of that person. And I wonder what would have happened if he never found the courage for himself to be like, fuck it, I'm a grown-up adult now. if he wasn't swallowed and eaten up by his trauma and couldn't get out of that, or couldn't find the courage to face his dad, you know? Like, that's such a scary thing to come to recognize within yourself, and the grief that comes with that, which I really, really sympathize a lot. I don't know, I think that movie was really, really like impactful to me, because I've learned very early on in my life that if you want something, you have to be the one that goes after it, and you gotta just be comfortable disappointing people. And on top of that, you have to be comfortable with people misjudging you and misreading you and misinterpreting your story because it doesn't match the script that they have written for you. I don't give a fuck about your script. Why would I care? I already came in here with the deep knowing. And like with me, when I was younger, I always had this feeling, you know, but I didn't really understand that, like, I didn't understand what that feeling was in the way that I do now. And one thing about like co-creation and manifestation that I believe is, whenever we get an inclination or an itch or a desire about something, I fully 100% believe that what we seeks us back. And even in this concept of like Micheal Jackson saying he wants to be this amazing artist, musician, dancer, all that he was, performer, that Micheal has always existed and it was always there. But it was a matter of realizing, like, this thing that I'm seeking is also seeking me back, and these possibilities are open to me. But I have to be the one that steps through that door and allows myself to implement and become this person that I'm asking and feeling so hard within myself. And that's the only way that that vision could ever be possible, is when you really walk through that door and learn to embody that person 100%. Whether people understand, whether your loved ones understand, whether strangers understand, whether people judge you for it even, you know? Can you be courageous for yourself to even still stand firm in who you are and who God said or the universe said you are, in that you feel it within the inclinations and the desires within you? Or do you fold under that pressure? Do you conform back to being minimized, being shrunk into that corner for yourself? And are you willing to disappoint people along the way? Because not everybody's gonna be happy with the decisions that you make. And for me, I look at it as, if somebody's saying that they support me and they care about my overall well-being, then the decisions that I make for myself shouldn't be a problem to you. And if they are, then what part of the script doesn't match how I'm aligning my own script to my own reality? And why is that such a problem for you? And is that really rooted in love or control? And why would you want that? You know? And I don't know, like, that movie was really inspirational to me because it hits a lot of like my own life story. And really, I wouldn't say it's tooted my own horn. I think it's just speaking from experiences and sharing my story without that shame, but realizing, like, I for myself always knew greatness exists within flow. I'm great in all my endeavors, baby. And to have gotten to that place, I just had to do what I had to do, you know? And there's more to the story, and more will come. But realizing where I'm at now is because also I was courageous enough to make decisions that not a lot of people saw for me. And it was okay to disappoint them, because I'm happy about my life. And I think that's the point, you know? What life would have Micheal had if he pleased his father just to sabotage and shrink himself in his? He probably wouldn't be who he is right now. He wouldn't even be a legend, probably, you know? But it's important to remember what your story is, and to step into that and be courageous in that and be bold in that. And fuck all else. Whether people judge or this and that. And honestly, with judgers, the one thing that I realized is, if there is people in my life who have judged me, I realized after a while, like in the moment maybe you don't realize it because you're already navigating your own shit. It's already like, there's so much going on in my life. I have a lot to unpack. I'm trying to step into this new identity for myself. Step it into the unknown. And then you want to add criticism on top of that when I'm just trying to be courageous and bold and step out of trauma and survival and something new for myself. That's cool. In that moment, maybe it might have been hard. And I don't know, I'm not really one to pay attention to drama. Like, I'm so engulfed in my own life that, like, I don't have the time to look over and be like, what you doing over there? You know, it's just not in my nature. Like, it's one thing to support people, but I don't care enough to worry about people in a way that takes away from my life and to just be snoopy. You know, I just don't have it in me. But in this aspect of my life, realizing, like, the people in my life who have judged me are judging me because they don't have the courage that I have for myself. A lot of people, we're mirrors to each other. Sometimes when we meet somebody who can exemplify a life that we want for ourselves, it's, unless we have like the ego to shed and really stand in our truth and be like, you know what, I admire this about you, And I admire it so much because I see a lot of myself in you, but I just haven't gotten to that step where I can do that for myself. That's what somebody who's like operating without ego and in a healthy manner does. But a lot of people don't really have that like healthy standpoint. So they see you doing greatness for yourself of like, well, how dare you have the same reality or circumstances in me, and you don't have to do the things that are confined to the script written for you. Well, choose differently, Karen. Choose wiser for yourself. Be bolder for yourself. Be courageous for yourself. But don't turn to the ones that are being courageous for themselves and then point the finger and be like, oh, you're the problem. Baby, I ain't no problem. There's nothing problematic about my life and choosing different for myself and choosing better for myself. If anything is a problem in this case, is you judging me for choosing better. Because why ain't you? Instead of judging me so fucking hard, why don't you do shit with your life that you can actually be so satisfied with that you don't even have to worry about the next person, you know? But it's a learning process, I will say. And honestly, like, fuck it. Let them judge. Let them hate. Nobody ever takes their time out of their day to judge somebody that ain't doing shit. So I just look at it as I must be doing something right. Like, what the fuck you talking about me so hard for? Like, just say you're intrigued and inspired. And let's call it a day, because I worked too hard, and yeah, I worked too hard for my life to get here, and I wouldn't let a naysayer who doesn't even take an inch for themselves try to tell me something about my life. So do you, be unapologetic, be great, and continue to be the awesome, beautiful, blossoming being that you are. And when you feel stuck in that, know that those same experiences are evident in reality. And there's greatness like Micheal Jackson's, who we're seeing their story, who had to navigate those things and just step into the possibilities open for them. And now they're an icon. And so can you? But trust your gut and follow your instincts, and fuck all the hate and all the other BS. Mwah.